Florida, and then I came back up north, and it was hotter here than it was in Florida.
Yeah, hotter there than it was in Florida. Is Florida usually pretty hot?
Usually this time of year, Florida's pretty hot. Because in Florida, you go up north for the summer, and then you stay for the winter, and then in the north, you leave for the winter and stay in the summer.
Mm. It's kind of like Thailand. Well, the reverse of it.
Yeah.
Oops,
So
my push-up alarm.
everything is how many push-ups are you doing a day? 100?
I'm trying to do every. I have an alarm set for every hour, and every hour I do max until push-ups until failure.
Hmm.
But sometimes I end up. Lately, I've been ending up just skipping the alarm and sitting around like a lazy person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of unmotivated in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean that's how things can go. I mean sometimes you're like in it and then sometimes you're like I just need a break. It's weird. It's weird how sometimes you can get into such a zone and then other times you're like I need to like just do nothing.
Yeah, it's hard doing nothing sometimes because then I feel like I got to be doing something.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm always doing something, but today I was relaxing a little bit, letting
Yeah,
the I don't know. In school you got breaks. You got like summer break, spring break, fall break. In the real world there are no breaks it seems like.
yeah.
You have
If
to
you
like
want them to be,
be
or it's done.
you have to be like you have to actually like schedule your breaks versus everything was planned for you back in the day.
Yeah, I learned how to do TM. They have like there's a special training that you go through to learn how to do TM. But
What's
basically, TM is sitting around TM, transcendental meditation.
Oh yeah.
Basically, sitting and doing nothing for 20 minutes, half an hour, and sounds like what's the big deal, but it's surprisingly very difficult to do.
15 minutes?
Yeah,
Do you listen to
basically
anything or is it in silence?
nothing. You do nothing. You just sit on the couch or sit on the floor or sit on a chair and in a comfortable position and do nothing. You just sit
Mhm.
and observe what goes on outside and inside. So, yeah.
I do that from time to time, but I listen to something or I put on a fan so there's a little noise.
Oh, some like white noise. You listen to
Yeah,
music on your phone or some kind of calming white noise or something.
yeah, recently I've been listening to like some ADHD playlist on Spotify, but it's like 25 hertz. It's like no, it's just like a humming noise.
Yeah, it's supposed to heal your body with sound or something
Yeah.
like that.
I also got these earplugs that sometimes I'll put the earplugs in and then put these on top of it and really try and drown everything out.
Yeah. I'd sometimes go and sit in my closet where it's really dark, close the door so my cat can't reach me because my cat likes to come and hang out. Even when I'm doing nothing, he likes to come and sit on my lap. But if I go in my closet and sit, then he like paws at the door and like, "Meow, what are you doing in there? Did you get stuck?" Because I use that closet sometimes for timeout. Well, not recently, but when he was being a bad boy, I put him in the closet for like an hour or so. So maybe he
Oh,
thinks I'm putting myself in timeout. I did something bad.
yeah.
I don't know. Cats are fun.
Hopefully, no one who thinks you're abusing your cat by putting them in the closet.
Yeah. I was trying to get him to stop peeing on stuff, and my friend said you should do that. As like when he pees on something he's not supposed to pee on, not in the litter box, then make him smell his pee and then put him in timeout for a while.
Hmm.
He stopped. He hasn't
Well,
done it for a long time.
I guess it worked. Yeah. Our
Yeah.
daughter, she
Sometimes it's
does
tough
not want
because
to
you
go
gotta
in
be like,
timeout.
uh, I guess there's a little bit of a delay between the when we say something and the other one hears it. But I was just gonna say it's like sometimes you got, and it probably goes into child raising too. Like you got to do stuff sometimes that seems like it's not the right thing to do, seems too harsh, but it's like that's what you need to do at that moment in time, and like that's what gets the message across. You know?
Yeah, I mean, with our daughter, she does not want to go in timeout, and
Yeah.
timeout is literally like in her play area, but it's just like shutting the gate so she can't get out.
And she still has all her toys in the play area.
Yeah, but it's like she knows it's timeout, even though she has like all of her toys in there.
Mm.
Her just not being able to get out is enough to like let her know.
Yeah. Does she really not like? Because see, what happened sometimes is that like I don't know if I ever got really put in timeout. I got threatened with being put in timeout, but go to your room or something is like that's where my toys are, so I can pretend that oh I don't want to go in timeout, but it's not really a bad thing because like all my toys are there.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's
It's
like a
worked because
reverse
she was
psychology.
yeah, she was like grabbing at this gas line for our gas stove, and we're like, "Don't touch that." And she kept grabbing it. Then another time she like ran into the street.
Yeah.
But it's
Wow.
like you can't just like use the timeout for everything. Otherwise, it doesn't become a punishment. Just because like, oh, you always threaten me with timeout, it doesn't mean anything.
Did you explain like why you shouldn't touch the gas line or why you shouldn't run into the street?
Well, she's only 2. I don't think she understands all that.
No.
But she understands that if she does it, she'll go in timeout.
Well, maybe
Eh, eh,
onomatopoeia is good. Like touch gas line, boom,
I
everybody
mean, that would
dies.
be then we would all be put in timeout. A
Yeah.
different kind of timeout, though.
Yeah. When I was young, that's what I thought getting fired meant. In
Put in timeout.
elementary school, there were these two chaperones, for lunchtime. And then all of a sudden, one day, one of them was gone. Like we never saw him anymore. And people started asking, like, where did whoever go? I don't remember his name, but it was like, where did he go? And the other guy was like, oh, he got fired. And then in my mind, I pictured like he went into a room and they put flamethrower on him and he got fired. That's what I thought it was.
Like, like
As a
fired men light
third
someone on
grade.
fire.
Yeah. I was like, oh man, I never want to get fired. That was horrible.
Yeah, in corporate America, someone would call him and be like, "Hey, is so and so there?" They'd be like, "They're no longer with us," and they'd be like, "What do you mean they're no longer with us?" They're like, "Oh, they don't work here anymore."
Yeah. Mm. And I kind of assume the worst on that kind of stuff.
Yeah, people do. I mean, technically, they're no longer here. Uh,
Yeah.
but no longer with us means typically something else.
Yeah, it actually, it actually does. Like when you pass away, that's what you say.
Yeah,
But context is important.
context is everything.
Yeah. So you got a lot of topics to discuss. You had 5
Yeah, we
points
we,
put up
we were
last week,
hoping
and I had
talk
two.
about the oil shock. A lot of that seemed to have come and gone. Possibly, we're having some market turbulence, and then obviously like economic outlooks and housing market. I think the housing market's struggling right now, pretty hard. I mean, there's more sellers than buyers, and up until recently, there was more. It was the inverse of that. So there's been some developments. But I mean, the market went up and down so fast. I mean, it was kind of like a big head. It was like a big head fake.
Yeah, it's been doing that. There's a lot of stuff going on, and people don't seem to really know what's going to happen in the next. Like for example, the Iran thing. it was all the news was talking about going to World War III, like it being one of those things that set off the powder keg of different treaties being executed and us going into war and Israel going into war and that escalating. But now it seems to have,
Come and gone.
yeah, a ceasefire agreement announced and everything like that.
Yeah, I was watching the market to like 8:30 sometime last week, and I saw that like oil companies were surging and everything was falling. I was like, something's happening. And then I saw that Iran and Israel were attacking each other in some sort of capacity.
What do you think, like moving forward? What do you think is going to happen with that? Or what's your outlook?
I mean, you don't know with war. I mean, they said there's a ceasefire, but I mean, who knows? But I mean, even something that as fast as that, typically there's going to be disruptions because oil is traded. It's like forward looking, so the futures went up. But like, is that going to mess up other things such as like the supply chain and things like that? So I mean, one of the things that we had here is like the Red Sea attacks affecting shipping routes. I mean, if people can't get the things that they need on time, that disrupts the whole flow of the world economy. And if the it's kind of like if like an artery gets blocked, you can't get enough blood through the body, and your body can't work effectively. You know, supply chain with goods and services being able to move freely around the world is allows the world to go round, which
Right.
is uh, the reason AI is booming is because people believe AI is going to make companies more efficient via output, similarly to like what the internet did in the 90s, 2000s. It's like very similar.
Yeah.
Uh, but when it comes to like food, AI doesn't deliver food to people yet,
Yeah.
or grow food, or make the food, or package the food. Not that I know of.
Do you think that there is going to be a world war?
Hmm, probably not. I I believe most war now is kind of like not like fighting war. It's different. It's like currency war.
Yeah.
Everything comes down to currency.
Yeah.
uh, Currency leads to real war. But I mean, the real war now is like, I mean, if you demolish a country's currency and you make it so that the people in that country can't purchase anything because they can't afford to, I mean, that's essentially an act of war. Same thing with like basically Warren Buffett was saying like tariffs is a basically an act of war in some sort of capacity because I mean it all comes down to flow of goods and services and money. People in different countries, not just the United States, need to be able to buy things. I mean, that's what happened to Germany post World War One. They had hyperinflation, and the people in that country couldn't buy anything.
Yeah. That was a wartime strategy after World War One to keep that going, to cause disruption in the German economy.
Hmm.
I saw a really interesting video yesterday, short lecture about a guy who was describing where money came from. And, this, he starts with the story that we've been told about money. It's like, oh, well, in the beginning, Josh has an ox and I have a banana and Josh likes bananas, but he can't, and so we barter with each other. We trade our bananas for oxens. And then we're like, well, sometimes I don't want any oxens and sometimes you want an apple instead. So let's introduce this third item, which is currency or money, and let's use that to exchange. That's the traditional story that we've been told.
Hmm.
But this guy makes a point, 2 points that I thought were really interesting. Was that one is that's not how money came about. That's the story that we've been told about it, but the reality of where money came from and why it was introduced, we have no idea. Because the very, very first writing was actually accounting to keep track of stuff, to
Hmm.
keep track of how much something was worth. And it was like they would write it in the temples, like a banana or an oxen is worth this much pounds of grain. and that's where you get the pound from, or this much liras, and like lira is a unit of measurement too, right? Um,
Yeah. I
so that
don't.
was one point, and then the second point was money was introduced as a way of preventing unnecessary conflicts. Because if I did something bad, if I damaged you, or damaged your property or killed you or something like that, then you would want to go to war against me, kind and kind, an eye for an eye. But instead, if there's like, well, the court will order you to, order me to pay for the damages that I've committed. That's a way of settling the problem without killing each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's essentially what is war? Most people associate war with like bullets, missiles, and bombs.
Yeah,
But I mean, war is just wanting to, like, you can play a sport and you can say you're going to war. It's like a battle. You want to like defeat your enemy.
yeah. But
So,
it was the sport at the end of the day, you're still buddies with the other team. Sort of like understood that you're putting on a show. I guess real actual war is like you want something out of the other side. Like they will suffer a loss and we suffer a gain. It's like a zero sum game, I guess.
hmm, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've ever noticed, you've seen like in the grocery stores, they have like the self checkout.
Yeah.
If you get cash back, it says notes on the machines. It doesn't say like dollars, it says notes. And I mean,
Notes.
basically, like the U.S. government, like other countries, invest in our treasuries, and then those countries give us money, and then we issue that debt. So essentially, I mean, I'm not like an economist or anything. I look at it as like money is just debt,
Yeah.
and then we're using it to pay for goods and services. But who makes the money? The federal, what is it? The Federal Reserve. They print the money, and then they're issuing the debt so they can print more money, and then they give that money out in the forms of loans, stimulus, government spending.
Yeah. Money
So,
always had to do with the authority.
mm-hmm,
The church might issue money or the government might issue money, and it's all backed by like the power of that authority. So there's no like intrinsic value in our dollars. It's just it's backed by the full faith and credit of whatever government is in play, right? So if you
mm,
overthrow the government, now all of a sudden now who cares about the money, right?
right, and that's the problem with having too much of a denomination of any one currency, and that's the reason uh, you need to invest into things that aren't government backed, such as like companies or building a business or creating something that generates the cash and helps that entity create the cash. Because I mean, a lot of these corporations have a ton of money, a lot more than governments do. Well, most governments.
Oops. Yeah, I mean, the money is all the dollars are all, like you said, Federal Reserve notes. So have a monopoly power over the country or whatever
Mm-hmm.
nation that uses the nation or nations, even if it's other nations. Like the U.S. dollar was the only for a long time what you could use to buy and sell oil. And then countries who didn't want to use the dollar sometimes they got overthrown. So it's like a power, it's a force multiplier in a way, you know. So that's it's actually kind of a interesting point into like the our government has the power to issue its own money and issue its own currency.
Mm-hmm.
They've currently outsourced that to a third party. Well, it's part of the government, but they've chartered this organization to do it called the Federal Reserve, and they the way that it like works is not a very good deal for us because they create the money. The Federal Reserve creates the money and then basically buys treasuries or bonds or lends it in some way, shape, or form to us, and then the government's supposed to pay back interest on
Hmm.
stuff that was created from nothing. So why
Yeah,
doesn't Congress just create the money itself and issue it on its own?
yeah. Well, it's like, what are they? It's like they lend the money and then they could print more money and use that money to pay off the interest. I remember getting a couple phone calls about the I bonds that came out. Do you remember those?
No.
Yeah, these I bonds came out in like 2020, 2021. Basically, they're like from the government, and they said like basically they're going to be, you can only buy a certain amount of them, but basically the government was going to guarantee they're going to pay uh, the people that decided to purchase these things like a rate that was tied to whatever inflation was, because inflation was so out of control.
Oh,
Because but
good
inflation
deal.
was out of control because things couldn't move freely around the world, and then obviously there was a lot of printing done. And
Yeah,
when there's a lot of printing, I mean, if you increase supply on something, it's going to drive the price down, and inflation is just an increase of prices. Or the other way to look at it is just if your currency is decreasing, that means you could buy less cookies for the
yeah.
same amount of dollars if your currency is decreasing in value. So it's hard to know sometimes, is it, are prices going up, or is the dollar going down, or is it some sort of combination in between?
It's an interesting question, and I did a analysis of this thing with regards to cars. Um, Intuitively, you might think like, okay, so when the first mass-produced car, the Model T, came out, uh, I'll ask you, what do you think? Do you think that that car was more expensive then than it was today? Like compare today an entry-level car versus an entry-level car 100 years ago when the car first started being mass-produced, and today.
Mm-hmm.
Which car in what time period would be more expensive?
Probably the one, I would think the one 100 years ago, because they didn't have the same technology to build the cars. You needed people on the assembly line for
Yeah,
the horseless carriage. That's how they marketed it.
interesting. If you look at the dollar amount, the average car today, entry car, it's like maybe $20,000 if you buy it new. When they first came out, it was maybe 700, $800.
Oh, that was a ton of money back then.
Yeah, but it's the same. Like if you convert those both to gold, the gold rate and the gold or silver, either one, the gold or silver rate back then and the gold and silver rate now, you end up with basically the same amount of gold or silver required to buy the car.
Hmm.
So if you take, 20,000, let's say, I did the analysis when gold was like, let's say $2,000. So you need 10 ounces of gold to buy a car. Take 10 ounces back 100 years ago, you could buy an entry level car. It costs you the same amount of gold. So and there was another guy who wrote about like a suit. If you wanted to buy a custom suit in ancient Rome, it costs you a gold coin. About what it costs now too. So the value of the car, which is getting from point A to point B in a personal capacity, not having to rely on, horses or other kinds of means of transportation, public transit. I don't know if they probably had that in some shape or form back then, but it's the same. It hasn't changed at all. Just the price is different. It goes back to your point of like, what happened? Did the price change or did the inflation just decimate the value of the currency?
Well, we do know the currency has been decimated over time.
Yeah.
However, the standard of living has also improved a
Yeah.
ton over the last 100 years as well. There are still a lot of issues that people have nowadays. However, the issues people had 100 years ago were they typically didn't even, some people wouldn't even have enough food to eat. Here in America, it seems like people have enough food to eat because we have an obesity issue. Not saying everyone does. There's definitely people still struggling, but I mean, we have other issues out there now, such as like, I don't know. There's always issues, regardless of time period.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting. But I mean, the cars are definitely better. They're safer. They go faster.
Yeah. Oh, much more so.
I
They're
mean,
basically
did they
now
even
driving
have tires
themselves.
back then, or were they like wood? I don't even know. I imagine the tires were like probably like this thin,
Yeah. I think in the beginning they might have been solid tires, very heavy.
like metal,
Yeah. But
just
yeah, you're right.
clunking down the cobblestone streets, going going over horse manure.
Um,
Yeah, because there would be horse manure all over the cities.
yeah. Nowadays
There,
the cars start driving themselves too. Like,
yeah, I mean, we're
you ever
seeing
driven one?
like a self-driving car.
Yeah, or I guess been driven by one of those.
Yeah, I've done autopilot before.
Yeah. Oh, the Tesla autopilot.
Uh huh. It worked surprisingly well.
Yeah.
It's a little scary though when you're sitting
Really
there.
solid. Yeah, no, it is. But I feel like I'm paying attention more to how the car is automated than when I'm driving myself. It's kind of weird. It
Well,
takes a
most
little
of the
bit.
time you're driving, you're technically on autopilot. I mean, most places people are driving for their daily transportation are the same 4 or 5 places: work,
Yeah,
grocery, school, home. So sometimes it's like if you're driving somewhere, I, I mean, this has happened to me. I'm like driving somewhere and I like start driving in a direction. I'm like, oh, I'm actually not going there. I got to go this way. And then I have to like turn around.
yeah, it happens to me too.
So, I mean, most people are on autopilot already because they're taking the same route, they're going the same direction, same time of day.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, the research is showing that these cars that have autopilot, it's going to decrease the amount of accidents
Oh, much.
substantially.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, that would be good for, I would think it'd be good for insurance companies because less people would be having claims.
Yeah, they have to figure out another way to make a bunch of money because they're not gonna really like that. I mean, there's these Waymo cars. You heard of Waymo?
Yeah, it's owned by Google.
They use San Francisco as like a testing city. So there's a bunch of Waymos driving around here. They do it in a couple other cities too, but I've taken one and they drive really well. And I also drive a scooter on the streets. And I've noticed that, like, let's say, for example, if I'm coming up on a Waymo car behind it, coming in the same lane, like I want to pass it, it'll kind of move over to the right of the lane. So it gives me more space to pass. It's
Hmm.
always paying attention. It's never distracted on its phone or doing its makeup or trying to get something. It's like it's always paying attention, so it's a lot more safer in that way.
How
The
is it on the inside of those
accidents
cars?
that it does, huh?
How is it on the inside of those cars? Are they comfortable? What do they look like?
They're like Jaguar. I don't know the model name, but they're comfortable.
I don't
Women
know who.
like them because they don't have to deal with like a smelly Uber driver or taxi driver or something like that, or somebody who wants to talk to them. You know?
Yeah, I was reading something. They were saying that the price is more expensive than like a typical Uber. However, a lot of people are willing to pay that price just for not. I guess I mean
Yeah, yeah,
I know
it's expensive.
not knowing who is driving the car, but I mean companies like Uber and Lyft obviously I would I mean people slip through the cracks, but they typically know who their drivers are. However, it looks like that Uber and Lyft and Tesla with their robo taxi could put all Uber drivers out of business. And essentially, it's pretty interesting that they have all these Uber drivers, but then when you're driving for Uber, you're in the app, so you're giving them just data on all of the routes. So all of these people are basically a part of the system to give Uber and Lyft the data that they need in order to do the self driving.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah. I mean, it's like now we're getting into the point of like, oh, all these self-driving cars are going to put a whole industry out of business and a lot of people out of work. But at the same time, it's like, do you want to be a driver?
Yeah, I mean,
I've, you know, it's kind of a tricky question because like I've done it before. I get bored of it pretty quickly. It's the same thing. You pick people up, you load the stuff, and then you drive around and you drop them off, and then that's the same thing. It's like I really like driving, but doing it as a job, it gets boring very quickly.
yeah, but I mean, like any job, new innovation leads to typically more jobs. But like going back to what you were saying about your beard, half the people liked the beard, half people didn't. They're going to be obviously if people are making money off Uber and it's their full time job and they lose their job, they're going to be upset. But I
Yeah,
mean,
especially if
if
you have
you're
no
a
like
Uber
safety.
consumer and the price of Uber goes down because they don't have to pay the drivers anymore, and it's probably safer, that's a win for the customer.
Yeah, the concept is like, well, now that the guy doesn't have to drive Uber all day long, he has more free time to pursue other things that are better, for a brighter future. But then it's like it's the same as with all the farming. When farming was being the industrial revolution, it's like, what are we going to do for work and for food now? You know, so it's sort of like I don't know. What do you do if you're living? Because a lot of people are living like paycheck to paycheck, and they do Uber not because they love it and it's their favorite thing to do in the whole wide world, but it's because like I need to pay my bills.
Well, plus it's easy. Like you don't have to go to a job interview. You just gotta apply, and you have a good enough driving record, and you have insurance, and Uber will accept you.
Yeah, right.
You don't even need your own car. You could rent a car from Uber. They'll give you the car to drive,
Yeah, I've done that too.
so that way you don't have to put miles on your own car.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you need like a new deal kind of. You need something for people to do.
Well, I feel like that falls back on the person. I mean, every person has to figure out what they need to do in order to live the life that they want. Unfortunately, some people don't see it that way. It's probably the same people that just say like, "Oh, I'm gonna move somewhere else."
Like, how do you mean?
Like they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna move to a different country. I'm leaving. I'm leaving America."
Because they don't like it and they want to go somewhere else? You mean, or like?
Yeah, I mean, I've been to other places. It's fun to visit, but living there, I don't know. I don't know if it would be as nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I've traveled a lot of places, and I feel like the more places I've been and seen, it's sort of everywhere is the same. Things are different physically. Like in some places, you poop into a hole in the ground, but day to day, it's all the same stuff. Like you still go to work, you still have a life, you still do all the same normal activities. It's just like in some places, it's just designed a little bit differently, but you still have all the same problems, the same like considerations. I don't know. Some societies I feel like are organized a little bit better. and some are organized a lot worse. And government policy plays a big role in all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to a guy today from China saying like most people in China, even though they don't make very much money, each person, like each Chinese citizen, still has a safety net. Like if they lose their job or if they don't even want to work for 1 or 2 years, they'll still be fine. And it's not because of government handouts; it's because they have their own savings or their own house or whatever, right? But at the same time, it's like that didn't just like come about naturally, but government policy played a big role in that.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's all relative. I mean, if you just don't buy silly things and you know how much money you're making, and you live in a country where you have a reasonable wage to buy all your things and allows you to put some money away, it's just all math, right?
Yeah. So then, do you think like, from what I see from the statistics, it seems like the average financial situation of people is getting worse in the United States. Do you think that is just like, oh, people don't know how to deal with money, they don't know how to manage money, or there's like a institutional government policy type of issue?
I don't know. I mean, I've seen like the stats where it says like most people don't have like $1,000 saved.
Yeah, I used to use that stat all the time.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. Who are all these people? I mean, it's a pretty big country. It seems like the economy's still doing well. I still go places. People are still out and about doing things, buying things, going to concerts, sporting events.
Yep.
So I'm not sure where all the data is coming from or how it's compiled or even how accurate it is. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Um, I look around and people are still doing things. Maybe they're just spending all their money, but we have a consumer economy. I mean, that dates back to like the 1950s. Is
Yeah,
the introduction of the suburb. You know, you can buy a house, you can buy a car, you can buy a refrigerator, you can go to the bank and get a new toaster. You can start getting things.
yeah. You see, like, are you on TikTok?
I have one. I'm not really on there scrolling too much.
I see, like, all the time people are explaining, like, or complaining about their situation. Like, they're living at home, they can't afford to rent, even with their entry job or mid-level job or whatever. They can't afford basic, like, an apartment or something like that.
Hmm. I'm not sure what the circumstances are, but I mean, I don't know about you, but when like I graduated school, I was like living in a place with like three roommates in order to afford to live in the place.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, that's what you do in the beginning. You get roommates. You do what you can to afford wherever you're living. I mean, people in New York will have an apartment with a bunch of roommates in order to afford rent. I'm not sure if that's true or if someone just doesn't want roommates. So like, oh, I can't afford a nice apartment by myself.
yeah,
In the beginning of a situation, unless you inherited the money or you started saving money when you were like little, or you have like parents that support you. I mean, in the beginning, you gotta do what you can to get by.
yeah,
So, I mean, even when I bought my house, I had three roommates.
yeah. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, you just do what you can to save as much money as possible until your responsibilities get to a point where it's like not really acceptable to start having roommates. I don't know when that happens, but I mean, it does happen eventually. Like, it's like, I'm getting a little older here. It's weird to have like three roommates.
Yeah, probably when you get married and start having kids, you don't want roommates at that point.
Yeah, I don't think having roommates when you have like a wife or husband and kids and want to start a family works well. But I mean, you are still on a team mentality. Like, I mean, there's still two of you that can like support each other in different ways. So, I mean, you're still not like fully on for like all responsibilities.
Yeah. So what you're talking about, or what we're talking about, reminds me of something that happened recently.
Mhm.
Did you hear about this? The baby bonus thing, where for each new baby born after I think January 1st, 2025, the Treasury will put $1,000 into a special kind of savings account for the child when they get a social security number that they can then use when they get 18, 25, and so on. Like the money becomes available to them. It's
Mhm.
sort of like social security program now, except for the formative years. I mean, did you
Yeah.
hear about that?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I've heard that like, hey, like if a child's born and the government gave them $7,000 or something into like a retirement account and they can't touch it until they're retired, they would have enough money to be self-sufficient. I don't know if that's true or not. Um, I don't feel like doing the math in my head right now. Uh,
No.
but I mean, but it kind of makes sense. If the government doesn't want the economy to fall, how does everyone judge the economy? By the stock market. So if they're going to print money, that's going to cause inflation. But if they're going to put that money into like an S&P 500 index fund and they're pumping $1,000 times however many children are born, that's going to
Yeah.
keep the market from falling, as well as people in 401k plans if they're on auto invest and they're just buying like the S&P 500. That's
Yep.
basically putting money that's going to be injected into the system regardless of what's happening.
Yep. And when the beneficiary comes of age, it's the taxable income for them.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like buying a house 10 years ago when interest rates were low. People are like, oh, I locked in this great rate. But yeah, houses are way more expensive than they were 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So even if you were paying 20% interest on a house 50 years ago, the dollars is way more than today. And I think that's what people don't get is like, it's the dollar,
Yeah.
the amount of dollars that you're paying, not the rate.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Probably not a lot. I mean, just it's like, oh, I got this rate. It's 5%. That's a good. I was told that's a good rate. But then, like, you look at your mortgage statement, and I mean, if it's $3,000 mortgage, probably like $2,500 or more of it's going towards straight interest.
Hmm.
So I mean, the bank's going to make 20, 30 grand that first year just
Yep.
on interest.
Yep.
It's a pretty good return
Yeah.
as long as everything doesn't collapse, which it doesn't seem like it's going to, because we actually have a housing shortage, and that's why we're in this pickle that we're in now with housing.
Yeah. And that's the whole, I think, like the whole concept. There's people who want the market to crash and everything to go, you know, turn upside down and balls up. And that would probably not be very good to do that
Well,
if
it's
that
already
happened.
happened a few times the last 5 years.
Yeah.
We had like pretty fast
Not in a big
recoveries.
way. Not in like the same as 2008 or 2000s type of thing. Or even
Yeah, I mean, people are talking about like the student loan debt, but the loan debt is much smaller than the housing debt.
yeah.
It's a drop in the bucket. I mean, I don't know how much the student loan debt is off the top of my head, but it's not significant enough where if everyone defaulted on their debt, it would like be catastrophic.
Hmm.
It might actually be a good thing because that means people are spending more money on goods and services. It would just be like who's holding the debt would be in trouble. I don't
Yeah.
know who holds the debt. Is it the US government? Is it state governments?
I guess it depends on the loan. I think a lot of them are federal loans.
Well, then they can just write off the debt as a bad debt like any business would. They'd be like, all right, I'm writing off the debt. I'm not getting paid. I'm just going to cut my losses.
Yeah, that's I think what a lot of people are hoping for. with that
So
moratorium and whatnot, but I don't know if that's going to
yeah, we're
happen.
starting to see that with like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. There's some things going through, like I think they're in like in some sort of conservatorship, and they're saying that once they exit conservatorship, that debt could roll off like the balance sheet of the U.S. government and help lower the deficit.
Yeah, wouldn't be a bad thing.
No, I'm unsure of all the details, but I mean, I think that was like the thought process. It's like, oh, if we, but I mean, any business can just write off a debt that they're owed money. Like if I sign someone up and they agree to pay me $20 and they decide not to pay me, then I just cut my losses and write it off as a bad business debt.
Yeah, and if you can create the money too,
Well,
why
yeah, I mean,
would
they
why
can
would
create the
you
money.
do
They're like,
that?
I lost money here. I'll just create more money there.
Yeah, I mean, we get into the concept of like free stuff. The government giving you free stuff is not really looked upon as a good thing. Well, I guess one half of the what do you call it, like extreme left wing people say, "Oh no, that's a horrible thing," and then the extreme right say, "Oh yeah, that's a great thing," or no, the opposite of what I said.
Yeah,
Like, no, no government handouts. You shouldn't be getting anything from government. And then on the other side, it's like, yeah, but that's what government's supposed to do. That's written in the Constitution. It's supposed to provide for basic infrastructure and like livelihood type stuff.
right. But then this thing called income tax was introduced.
Income tax. Yeah, that's actually one of the topics that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
had
you
a
got federal, state, local, sales, alcohol tax, tobacco tax. I mean, there's
Yeah,
all these little taxes that, I mean, pretty much anything you buy has a tax.
yeah, almost. A lot of the stuff is taxed in America in the sort of cultural sense is very similar to the feudal systems from which we left. Like your property is taxed. Like the house that you live in is taxed.
Yeah, there's taxes every year on it. And as
But
the house value goes up or the property value goes up, so do the taxes.
yeah, but is your house a productive asset?
Other than you live in it, no.
So it doesn't make any income for you.
Nope, it's just shelter.
It's basically a liability.
Yep, it's a liability.
Yeah. So I mean, if your house was a business that's producing money, then maybe that would make sense for an income or a property tax to be imposed on that. But in a way, what's the use of that tax? Because now you got to go out and you're basically you don't really own your house in a way. You're paying rent to the government. But I
Yeah,
want
if
to show
you don't pay the
you.
tax, then they'll eventually take it
Yeah, exactly.
or force you to sell it so you can pay the tax,
Pay rent.
or take out a loan from a bank and then pay interest to the bank to pay the tax. And then you're paying interest to the bank, but then you're still going to pay tax every year.
So let's go through because I remember I was emailed about income taxes a while ago. I've been researching this for the last 5 years, and in the last year or so, I came to a very interesting conclusion and found some very interesting stuff about what the income tax actually is. And for 2024, I did my taxes correctly for the first time in my life.
Oh yeah, is this something that you like mentioned to me, uh, like late last year?
Yeah. So can I share?
Yeah, I think there's a share button.
Let's see. I want to share my screen somehow. Oh, window. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. All right. You see that?
It's coming up.
So basically, what I've been doing wrong from all the jobs that I've had in the past and all the income that I made is that I've been converting non-taxable income into taxable income by way of the 1040 form for each year.
Hmm.
So if you go back to the original concept of what our government is supposed to be based on, the Declaration of Independence states that governments exist to secure your rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness and other things, so on and so forth, right?
Right.
The Constitution is built on top of that. You know, the United States of America is established to form a more perfect union, establish justice, promote the general welfare, and all this kind of stuff, right? And then there's administrative procedures and administrative rights and powers given to Congress, and one of those is taxing power, right? So the Constitution defines two types of taxes. It defines direct taxes and indirect taxes. The federal government, the way that we look at it nowadays is that in the cultural sense, it owns the citizens.
Hmm.
In the same way that a feudal lord before owned all the property, he sort of basically owned your labor. So you go to work and you make some money and you do some labor. Let's say you earn $10,000 this year. Your feudal overlord, because you're on his property and using his stuff and doing the work required by him, he takes $2,000 from you. That's just automatic. That's how it's supposed to be. Our system of government was constructed in opposition to that,
Hmm.
where you own your life, your liberty, meaning you make your own law, and you're free to pursue your happiness in any which way you so desire, and nobody else has a claim to that, even your government. So in our system, if we make a contract, you and I, let's say, you hire me, you made a company 369 Financial, and I start working for 369 Financial, and our agreement is that you pay me $10,000 a year.
Hmm.
Okay. And so I make $10,000 a year of income. The federal government has no authority over that because it's not my feudal overlord. They don't own me. They don't own my work. I own my work. I own my labor and I own my life. So that concept, does that concept kind of make sense? The two just like distinct ways of ownership.
It does.
So the Internal Revenue Code is kind of confusing and it's written in a really convoluted way, but the Internal Revenue Code actually supports that concept. And that's what I discovered in my I discovered this like a year and a half ago. But in the beginning, I was like, wait a minute, the income tax is unconstitutional because how does the government claim to own me and my labor? That doesn't make sense. So I thought it was unconstitutional, but in reality, the laws are written 100% constitutional.
Mm.
So let's go to, I'll go down a little bit here. You're familiar with this type of form, right? This is a W-2 form.
Yeah, it's what the an employer will send to the IRS.
Yeah, so this is what I got for last year. I only worked 3 months or 4 months last year. So my wages wasn't that high. And they had a withholding section. This is, normal stuff. You get this. Almost everybody gets this. Most people who work a job get a W-2 at the end of the year. So they say how much you made and stuff, wages, tips, and other compensation, Social Security wages, Medicare wages and tips, federal income tax withheld, Social Security tax withheld, and Medicare tax withheld, right? All standard stuff. This is actually, so the company that I got this from was a family-owned company. It's owned by 4 people. It was an animal hospital clinic. And what they did here was use the old paradigm, right, where the government is your feudal overlord concept in making this form. So they reported to the IRS that this is taxable income. And therefore, we've withheld these amount of taxes and so on and so forth, right? So this is the number that you normally would put on form, line 1 of A of income, right? But according to the IRC, I didn't make any income last year. Because
Basically, you file that form, and that form reverses the error that is made when companies send the W-2 to the IRS.
Yeah. So I corrected the error. Because what I made is not federal income. Federal income income has a very specific definition in the tax code. So I made 0 W-2 wages. I made 0 dividends, 0 interest, 0 other ordinary dividends, no capital gains or losses, and nothing else, right? So my taxable income for last year was 0. So I did that, put all that in the form, 0 everything, right? Total tax 0. But I did have tax withheld. My employer improperly withheld taxes from my paychecks. So I put that there. And okay, so I just do all the math on the form and come out with this number that this is the amount that I would like refunded to me. Please send it via check. Okay. Sign it, date it. I was very late in doing my return this year.
Did you do a paper or electronic return?
Paper. I had to do it paper, and you'll see why in a second. So they have a specific form for correcting W-2s.
4852.
Yeah. So I filled it out. This is my corrected form W-2. Wages. The 3 sections for wages and tips is all 0. And I put in the amount that I got withheld for. And they ask you the question, how did you determine the amounts on line 7 and 8 above? And I say, payer furnished incorrect form W-2. Payer erroneously alleges payments of wages as defined in the Internal Revenue Code. These sections, there's 2 sections, chapters 21 and 22, I believe it is. I rebut the allegation, no such payments were received. And, lines 7E through F are the amount of tax withheld. And then there's a section about, if you overpaid your taxes, then that should be refunded to you. So that's what I did for W-2. And then also for all the other, like your bank will send you a 1099 for interest. I have to also correct that information. So they don't have a form for doing that, so I just do it on the form itself, cross out what interest income is. And I did a whole research and did a whole write-up of what interest means in the Internal Revenue Code. And I got to like 6,000 words, and then my blog writer thing says we can't go any more. You've reached the max word limit. So it is a really convoluted definition of interest. And what I got from my bank is not considered interest, according to the Internal Revenue Code. So I have to correct that information. So I corrected it, and I just do it on the 1099 form, and I put it as an attachment, and put a statement here that says basically what I got from my bank, what was reported to you was incorrect information. I'm now correcting it.
Hmm.
And then I did that for the 1099 div that I got. And then the 1099 MISC that I got, basically the same statement. And then the 1099B. So, this is considered the capital gains one.
Mm-hmm.
But this is all has nothing to do with operating a trade or business. Like, I'm not conducting these trades in the ordinary course of a trade or business, federal trade or business, right? It's not connected in any way, shape, or form. And there's also a very specific definition of what a capital gain is or what a dividend is. And I wasn't exactly sure, how much detail they need or want. So I just took everything and crossed it out and put X's there and said, no, this is not one of the assets that was exchanged in the ordinary course of a trade or business, and crossed everything out and corrected the information, and that was it. That's it. That's my return. It's very simple, right? There's no
Yeah.
additional schedules or anything like that. And 2 months later, I get this in the mail.
Well, there you go. I think we need to chat more about this.
Yeah. And it's exactly the amount that was withheld from my W-2. So yeah, I mean, it's an amazing discovery, right? Yeah, so there's other, this
Is this just for
1099
federal or also state? Or is state different?
in California, the state income tax is based on the federal income tax. So it's the same. But I haven't filed the state income tax return yet, which I probably should do. But in dealing with the state income tax department, it doesn't seems like they're a little bit more difficult to deal with. But I'm
Yeah.
gonna give it a try and see what happens. Because I want
All
them
right.
to follow the law, and I want
Well,
to encourage the government to follow the law too.
we'll see how this development goes, and sounds like you're on to something.
Yeah, and I'm not the first one to discover this by any means. There's like already thousands of people who discovered this, and it's just from reading the code very carefully. So isn't that interesting? it's like
Yeah.
it's like what the heck, you know?
Sweet. Well, I gotta jump, but I guess we'll see everyone on our next chat.
All right, sounds good. Good chatting. Bye.
Yeah. Happy chatting.